Bienvenidos y bienvenidas a la entrevista de la semana, este espacio de actualidad de Aracena, cada jueves, en el que hoy nos venimos a este entorno del Instituto San Blas, la Plaza Doña Elvira, para hablar de educación, de historia y de otros temas muy interesantes que nos trae hoy nuestro amigo Carlos Prieto, que bueno, él, como bien saben muchos en Aracena, sobre todo los más jóvenes, eres profe de este instituto, profesor de inglés. Ajá. Y creo que coordinador también del programa de plurilingüismo, de bilingüismo como conocemos, pero plurilingüismo. Porque hablamos de muchos idiomas.
Mientras más mejor.
Cuantos más mejor, cierto es que bueno, eso nos enriquece y sobre todo a nuestros jóvenes que están en este periodo de formación tienen que crecer en idiomas y en cultura a través de los idiomas, que es lo que vamos a hacer hoy aquí en esta entrevista, abrir un poquito la mente a otros mundos, a otras razas, a otros lugares de este mundo para hablar de temas bueno, que muevan un poco la conciencia, que también es algo interesante que podemos hablar aquí. Carlos nos ha traído unas invitadas muy especiales y se ha acompañado de Alfonso, de otro compañero también de este programa de bilingüismo, para hablarnos de la historia negra. ¿Qué es esto de la historia negra?
Bueno, pues la historia negra es una historia de desigualdad entre un tipo de personas y otro, y se supone que a los que amamos la educación siempre nos queda un poquito de esperanza de que el mundo se puede mejorar. Entonces tuvimos la suerte de que nos mandaran a estas dos asistentes de conversación que estamos a punto de presentarles. Las dos son de raza negra, son afroamericanas, las dos son conmovedoramente inspiradoras por muchas razones, por la razón del esfuerzo y de la lucha, y de que a veces el sueño americano es un poquito verdad, como vamos a poder comprobar en unos instantes.
El que vengan estas dos chicas, auxiliares de conversación, o auxiliares de inglés en este caso, al instituto, creo que debe ser muy enriquecedor para nuestros chicos y chicas, pues porque seguro que ya están aprendiendo mucho, ya no solo de la historia de su pueblo, sí, sino bueno, pues de otras muchas cosas más actuales, ¿no? Porque sí, cuando hablamos de historia parece que nos vamos al pasado, pero hay una historia muy actual, ¿no? Y sobre todo de los valores, ¿no? Sí. Vamos a hablar del racismo, todo eso que se intenta trabajar cada día, ¿no? Con nuestros jóvenes.
Sí. Loli, estamos aprendiendo todos, estamos aprendiendo mucho los docentes y el alumnado también está muy contento y muy excitado con la presencia de estas dos profesionales que nos acompañan. Y para contar un pequeño secreto, ahora que no me está escuchando nadie, pues les diré que la permeabilidad cultural va a llegar tan lejos como para que una de nuestras asistentes vaya a peinar a un alumno nuestro que es de raza negra y le va a peinar el sábado en su casa. Como podrán ver, bueno, pues es una influencia cultural que debemos aprovechar cada amiguita.
¿Cuál es el origen de estas dos chicas? Has dicho que son afroamericanas, ¿de dónde vienen? Y vamos a conocer un poquito antes de conocerlas físicamente, nos va a ir preparando Carlos el terreno.
Ok, tanto Whitney como ROGAE vienen de Estados Unidos, las dos vienen de la costa este, la más próxima a nosotros, la de Nueva York. Whitney es de North Carolina, Carolina del Norte, y ROGAE es de Delaware, de cerquita de Nueva York. Y en fin, tenemos muchas ganas, Loli, pues de un poquito compensar las cosas que no se nos dicen en la historia oficial. Hay grandes lagunas con respecto a muchas cosas, pero con su presencia era casi imperdonable no aprovechar el caudal de valores y de cultura que estas dos personas nos aportan.
Y de esa historia que no se nos cuenta o que viene tergiversada, manipulada a través de los medios de comunicación, que tenemos la posibilidad de conocer de primera mano, de estas jóvenes que viven una realidad en sus países, en Estados Unidos, y que bueno, que nos las van a trasladar. Es muy interesante, además muy enriquecedor que los chicos puedan hablar con ellas en inglés y que nosotros también podamos hablar y tener esta entrevista en inglés. Ayudaremos un poquito, por supuesto, a nuestros telespectadores para que llegue a todos, pero bueno, el escuchar sus voces, el escuchar el idioma, el que nuestros oídos se vayan haciendo a ese inglés de América tan especial, pues yo creo que también va a ser muy interesante en este espacio.
Sí.
Así que, Carlos, sí me gustaría, por curiosidad, saber hasta cuándo van a estar aquí, porque a partir de esta entrevista mucha gente las va a querer
Pues
conocer,
sí,
además de los chicos
sí,
y los profes del
sí.
instituto.
Pues tenemos buenas noticias para esta comunidad educativa, porque hoy hemos tramitado, justo hoy, hace unas horas, hemos tramitado la solicitud de renovación de la estancia de ROGAE. Ya está confirmado, ya está firmado y bueno, pues nos volverán a mandar a ROGAE y a Whitney. Casi la tenemos convencida, lo que pasa es que tiene una hermana gemela y tienen que hablarlo entre ellas porque su hermana quiere venir el año que viene también. Y entonces están consultándose para ver si quieren un entorno urbano o un entorno rural, o quieren ir más al norte o más al sur. Pero vamos, la presencia de ROGAE con nosotros el año que viene está confirmada.
Ajá, bueno, si Whitney tiene hermana gemela, podemos repartir, ¿no? Podemos tener
sí.
a su hermana gemela aquí el año que viene también y Whitney que se vaya a otro sitio, si así lo quiere.
Lo vamos a intentar.
Vamos a aprovechar que tenemos doble Whitney para intentar tenerlas a las dos por aquí. Y bueno, yo sé que este programa de bilingüismo en el instituto lleva ya muchos años funcionando y que este año pues sería un año en el que se planteaba decir, ¿será posible o no? Porque la situación mundial es muy complicada con la pandemia. Sí. No sé de qué forma se ha peleado desde el instituto para conseguirlo o cómo ha fluido pues que a la educación no interfiera la pandemia. ¿Cómo ha sido
Bueno,
eso?
pues en esta situación surrealista en la que estamos inmersos todos, estamos haciendo lo que podemos. Cada día es un nuevo día, cada semana es una nueva semana. Hemos seguido nuestra labor docente y ellas han seguido con su labor de asistentes de conversación, pues viniendo un día, sin venir el otro, la semipresencialidad está tan controvertida y bueno, pues lo estamos haciendo como podemos, no hemos dejado de hacer nada, solo que estamos trabajando un poquito a distancia. Las asistentes están grabando vídeos y están haciendo materiales para que puedan reproducirse siempre que haga falta. Y en fin, todos estamos aprendiendo con esta situación y todos nos estamos adaptando.
Bueno, todos estamos viviendo un momento histórico, además de surrealista, como dice Carlos, pero bueno, el que podamos compartir con personas que están tan lejos y que puedan vivir pues este periodo también o parte de él con nosotros, es muy interesante.
Sí, Loli, y además esto que has dicho que están tan lejos, no han visto a su familia desde que llegaron. Y eso es duro. Cuando te vas a un país nuevo por primera vez, como muchos en esta comunidad educativa sabemos, pues no es fácil. Te tienes que adaptar, comes tu comida, llevas tus zapatos, la camiseta que te regaló tu abuelita, te la llevas al país nuevo. Y estas dos personas que vamos a conocer son muy fuertes, no han dicho ni pío, y llevan mucho tiempo sin ver a sus familias, entonces se merecen un reconocimiento grande.
Y además son muy jóvenes, las estoy viendo por ahí detrás de la cámara, son muy jovencitas y realmente yo creo que lo mejor que pueden tener de Aracena es el cariño, el que las acojamos y bueno, seamos buenos anfitriones con ellas y todo el tiempo que pasen aquí pues que sientan el calor que les está faltando de sus familias en estos momentos tan difíciles. Vamos a pasar a esa entrevista que nos tenéis preparada, esa tertulia sobre la Black History, la historia negra, y vamos a hacer ese guiño desde aquí, desde Aracena, en el que también queremos ser abiertos, globalizados y crecer culturalmente a través de historias como la que hoy nos trae este equipo del Instituto San Blas, formado por Carlos y por Alfonso, que ahora le conoceremos también, y estas dos chicas.
Y por nuestros profesores y profesoras de las asignaturas no lingüísticas, las que se imparten en inglés, arte, biología, matemáticas, están haciendo historia, están haciendo un trabajo maravilloso. El primer agradecimiento creo que debe ir en la dirección de los docentes que se están ocupando de enseñar su especialidad en inglés. Y la verdad es para estar orgulloso. Bueno. Están haciendo cosas muy creativas y muy merecedoras de elogio.
Eso es hacer real y práctico el que este instituto sea bilingüe, ¿no? Es algo
pues sí.
que bueno, que realmente luego en la práctica tiene que verse, y esa es la forma de hacerlo, por supuesto con el esfuerzo de este equipo de profesores. Bueno, pues Carlos, muchísimas gracias.
Gracias.
Y vamos allá, vamos a ofrecer esta entrevista. No se pierdan ni un detalle de ella, muy atentos los oídos, porque nos van a contar historias que no conocemos, que seguro que muchos no conocemos. Así que toda una lección de historia y de valores en esta entrevista, en la que bueno, agradecemos muchísimo a ellas, a Whitney y
Roger,
que hayan pues prestado este ratito de su tiempo y que hayan querido compartir tanto con Aracena y con todos los vecinos de este pueblo que les acoge.
Pues sí.
Gracias, Carlos.
Gracias a vosotras. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your attention. It is with pleasure that we are going to introduce two co-workers of ours. They are conversation auxiliaries or assistants, and they both come from the United States. So, this is Whitney, she's Roger. Could you please tell us a little bit about yourselves and your family origins?
Sure. My name is Whitney. I am from North Carolina. I grew up in North Carolina in a small town called Statesville. My family is from North Carolina. My parents are from North Carolina. My grandparents are from North Carolina, so we grew up in North Carolina. I'm here as an English assistant, as Carlos said, and I've worked in La Julianita and San Blas.
Okay. Hello, my name is Roger. This is my first year as a conversational assistant. I am from a small state called Delaware. Not a lot of people know it. My family origins come from Haiti and also the United States. My dad is from Haiti originally and all of his family. And my mom is from Delaware, but her family is mostly from Maryland and New Jersey.
Maryland and New Jersey. Okay. Whitney and Roger, as you know, you inspired us to have this event, this Black History Month. Could you please tell us a little bit what Black History is, how you guys observe it in the US, and what you saw so far? What do you think about our work about Black History Month? What you've seen so far? I know that we have started this year. So, please tell me about Black history. What is Black history?
Okay, I'll start. Black history for me is a month in the U.S. where we focus on the history of Blacks in America. There's a focus on the accomplishments, achievements, contributions that Blacks have made to American history. It is unfortunate that we have to designate a month for this because Black history is, for many years, has been absent from classrooms, curriculum, American culture as a whole. But it is a special month that I think we're both really excited about, where for me, I get to learn a lot about my own history and a lot of accomplishments of Blacks in America that I still don't know about. Back home for me in the month of February, I try to do my own research and learn more about Black history in America. I am a teaching assistant in the U.S., and so for me that involves reading books to my students that focus on Black figures that were important in America, or doing a presentation where I educate students about Black history. So I'm really thankful for the work that you guys are doing and focusing on it in our honor. So yeah. Done.
Okay. So basically how I feel about Black History Month is kind of similar to what Whitney already said. It's definitely a month to be celebrated for the achievements of Black people that they have made throughout not only American history, but history throughout. I think that a lot of people should celebrate Black history, not just for a month, but for a whole year round, because there's a lot of history that a lot of countries don't know about that Black people have contributed to. Personally for me, since coming here and, talking to Carlos and other teachers about what's going on for Black History Month, I like the fact that each teacher had their own way of trying to figure out what Black History Month means to me and Whitney, and also what it means for them being in Spain. I noticed that some teachers went back to all the way to African roots. Some focused on artists and musical artists, and some focused on the really radical parts about Black history that most people don't know about. So far, I'm very thankful for them being so open to celebrating Black History with me and Whitney.
Yes, and from it, it's quite interesting. You have just mentioned that your family, the part of your family, comes from Haiti, and Haiti has an interesting history because it was the first nation which became independent. Yeah, there was some kind of movement against French slave owners, and the Black community got independent from France, and that was the first independent Black nation. I don't know if you are familiar with that.
Yes, I am. Haiti is the second, actually, Black community that got released, but they were the ones that were successful in their revolution. It was actually four groups that were in this revolution, and one was the big whites, which was Grand Blancs, and then petite whites, which were the whites that were poor. Then you have Black people who were freed, but not necessarily all the way free. They did not have rights, but they were higher up than slaves. And then you had the slaves. Within these four groups, they wanted more. Like the Grand Blancs, or the big whites, wanted more power to not just sell their products to France, but also do selling with Britain and into America as well. So they were looking out for that. The whites wanted to have power, the small whites, wanted to have just as much power as the big whites, but also wanted to have more power than the freed Blacks. And the freed Blacks just wanted rights in general to vote and to also be seen as, a big white or a little white. But the slaves in all, they just wanted to be freed. So all of them kind of, if I were to sum it up, they were kind of in cahoots with each other, not really, going back and forth, trying to make the most out of this revolution in order to get the most out of it. But in the end, the slaves were the ones who rose up the most, because they were seen as stupid. Most of the time they would act like they didn't understand what their owners were saying, or they faked illnesses and everything like that. Well, the whole time they were actually planning revolutions against the people who oppressed them. and this ended in a really it ended in a really long war, to the point that like slaves were freed and slavery was abolished, until Napoleon tried to come back and put slavery back and try to, how can I say this? Not try to put slavery back, but more so he tried to be like America is today, try to be a big corporate, and the slaves that were already in Haiti were not going for that. So he didn't want to do anything with that. That's why he sold Louisiana and New Orleans to America, so he wouldn't have to deal with that. And that's why Haiti is the way, you know, seen as this big I'm really thinking, it's really hard for me to think.
Haiti seen as a big, what do you want to say, like?
I think Haiti, most people don't know that Haiti was like the first successful slavery revolution. No one really knows that in Black history unless they look for that in Black history, which I think is kind of sad to say, because I did not know that, and I'm Haitian, and it took me a long time, about like when I was 19 years old, to figure out that my people were the ones to free themselves first.
Yeah.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you, Brigitte.
So,
I was going to ask you, you just mentioned the Haitian Revolution. What events that are related to Black history you think have been kept from mainstream education? We were talking recently about Tulsa. Can you please tell us a little bit about Tulsa and also some other events that everybody should know?
Okay, two main events that people do not know, is even Black people do not know, is about Tuskegee, the research on syphilis, and also about Tulsa. Tulsa was basically a community full of Black people, very Black, like enriched Black people, had their own bankers, own presidents, mayors, and everything like that. And what happened was there was an incident between a Black man and a white woman, where white people got really angry that they could not kill the Black man themselves without him going through trial first. So instead of focusing their anger on him, they decided to take their anger to Tulsa, which ended in a massacre of Black people. People got into their trucks, white people got into their trucks with their guns and started shooting any Black person that they saw on the street. There were places for Black people to go, but even when they were running to get to those places, white people were still shooting them. So it was kind of like, I wouldn't call it the first race war, but it was definitely a big massacre that a lot of people do not know about, and a lot of people are still feeling today. The other one is the Tuskegee syphilis research, where there were about 600 Black men, and 399 of them actually had syphilis, and they said that they were treating them for their bad blood. The entire time they weren't treating them, they were actually just doing experiments on them that were not helpful to the situation at all, and it was only supposed to last 6 months, but this actually lasted for 60 years. They didn't allow them to get out of the experiment, even though they gave them free burial service, free meals and everything like that, free medical, but they would not allow them to get out of the research. And also, even when they found the cure for syphilis, they were not giving the cure either. So after 60 years, Black people who were affected by this were able to do a lawsuit for $10 million, which they won. And so forth, they got free medical and everything that they received from the experiment, but it was a big loss to Black people in general because no one knew about it.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
So according to what she has said, it seems that America in general has been built upon difference, upon inequality. Yes, that motto from the South, equal but separate. Yes, I remember that. Yes, and I also would like to focus on an aspect. I have heard about Jim Crow laws. Jim Crow laws, I don't know if you know that. Yes, Jim Crow laws, and by this time, how black people were depicted in plays, how white people painted their faces. So this is an example of racism. Yeah. So I'd like to know how does this depiction of our African American people has influenced in racism, and if you can still see racist attitudes in the USA.
I'll start and then you, because, okay, so racism for me is when a person believes or they determine how they treat a person based on their race. So they determine if they have human traits or what capabilities they have based on their race. I think it's deeply rooted in American history and our culture, and I think it does still exist today. I think for me, I see it all the time on TV, in the news, but personally, I've never had somebody come up to me and say, oh, because you're black, I think that you are less than, you're not capable, you don't have these specific human traits. But it's more subtle, I think, from my experience. And so, for example, if I go into a store, I'm not greeted, I'm not acknowledged, I'm not asked like, oh, can I help you? And at first you think, well, maybe the employee's having a bad day, maybe they're just tired, or they just had an off day. But when something like that happens over and over as you grow up and you notice it, and then if you're in a store and a white family comes in and they are greeted and they're asked like, how can I help you? You start to wonder like, am I being treated differently because of my race? So I feel like that's an example for me of how I've experienced racism in America. I've also, as an employee, been in rooms or meetings where maybe I was one of a few black people in the room, the majority were whites, and so like I wasn't acknowledged or greeted or asked like, about my opinion or what I think about things. And so again, it's like when that happens again and again, it's like, why am I being treated differently? Like you can only help but wonder, is it because of the color of my skin? So those are a few examples for me.
Going back to what you said about Jim Crow laws, I do still think they're kind of enforced. I wouldn't say enforced, but they're kind of influenced in today's society. Definitely in the fact what you said, going into a convenience store and people don't ask you, do you want help? They actually walk around the store and watch to see if you will steal something.
Yes.
That's one reason why I feel like Jim Crow laws are still enforced, because people will judge you based off of your skin color. One example for me when I realized racism was a thing, well, I knew racism was a thing, but I didn't experience it firsthand, was when I was back in high school, and I was walking around with these group of white kids, and we were in the gym. The white girl that I was with, she looked at a group of black kids across from us, and she said out loud with no fear, look at those niggers over there. And I looked at her like, I'm black. And she's like, well, you're black, but those are niggers. And it made me realize that they have this character in their mind of what black people are supposed to be. And the reason because of that is because of the minstrel shows they used to put on during the time of slavery and a little bit after slaves were free, where white people would put on blackface and then make a fool of black people. And so that's what they think that black people are, fools. So when they see black people yelling or dancing or anything like that, or just typically having fun, they think of them as idiots and clowns. And that's because they were influenced by the minstrel shows that people put on during those times.
Thank you for sharing that.
Okay. Guys, what can you tell us about BLM, Black Lives Matter, which has been on the news lately? Please teach us a little bit about it. Let us know something about BLM, Black Lives Matter.
Okay. Do you want me to go first?
I would like you to cover this topic.
Okay. So Black Lives Matter was actually founded by women. It was more so to protect not just black people, but people's lives in general. It was a really good organization where they wanted black lives to be secured because they were the ones who were getting the most incarcerated, they were the ones who were getting killed the most, and no one was hearing our voice until later. It became a bigger movement, I say, around the time Trayvon Martin got killed, I believe, and it became a really big movement for not just, like I said, black people, but for minorities, for white people as well, because we started seeing the injustices within our government system. As far as the protests go and everything like that, I think what the media does is just show the negatives of Black Lives Matter, and it doesn't show the whole entire movement as a whole, where they don't just say, oh, Black Lives Matter most. That's a lie. They also say, this person matters the most because they were someone's child, or this person matters most because they were, important to this society. Like, I've seen people who were killed during the Black Lives Matter movement who weren't black. They were white, and they still said, say this person's name because they died for this movement and they shouldn't have. It's about injustices for Black Lives Matter. It's never about Black Lives Matter most. That's it.
That's good.
Poncho?
Yeah. So you were talking about injustices, the differences between black and whites in terms of justice. So I have just remembered a case which took place in the 40s. It was the case of George Stinney. I don't know if you know. If you know him.
George Stinney.
George Stinney.
I'm not familiar
Okay,
with
he
this.
was a 14-year-old guy who was sentenced to death. He was actually executed, and because he was accused of killing 2 white girls while they were picking up some flowers, maypops, I think it was the name of the flower, and he was like a scapegoat. Yes, they had to sentence someone, and they decided to sentence him to death. And in 2016, that boy was exonerated. So I have remembered that case. He was exonerated in 2016. He was declared innocent, but that has no solution. So this is the case that it was much easier back then to accuse an African American person than a white person. And as you have just said, things have not changed.
Yeah, happens all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. So, did you talk to any of our students who belong to a different ethnicity? We have Latino students, we have some black students, some Asian students. Were you paying attention to them and their feelings, or did anybody tell you that they were suffering from some kind of prejudice, discrimination, or racism here at San Blas?
I have not personally had a conversation with the minority students here. From my own experience of being a minority or the only black in an institution or university, I can only imagine that it could be difficult for them because they look different, their hair might be different, and for me, I am very different here in Aracena, and so I do get looked at sometimes or stared, so I can only imagine that it's difficult for them. And I can only imagine what kids or adults might say to them with words or without words that might make them feel uncomfortable. So I can empathize with them, but I have not had a direct conversation to say, how do you feel? How are you struggling? So.
All right.
When I did 4th level and 3rd level, I didn't really hear anything about the kids having prejudice here until I got to 2nd level, which was actually pretty recent. I was teaching the kids about Black History Month, and then I asked them that do they feel any prejudice or racism here in Aracena. A lot of them were kids who already lived here, who had lighter skin, And they said no, except for one person who said yes, and she was a color like me. I didn't go into it further because we had a short limited of time, but I felt that she probably had her own experiences that she went through with racism in Aracena that I have not experienced yet, except for a couple of looks and stares here, but that's about it.
Thank you, Roger.
Okay, so you are feeling well here. People are treating you well here in Aracena. Okay, because it's quite remarkable because in this town there are not many immigrants like in other towns. So it is quite normal to catch people's attention because they are not accustomed to seeing people belonging to other ethnicities.
Okay.
So have people treated you well here in Aracena in general?
You want me to answer this?
Yeah, because you want me to start?
You can start.
Okay. I have been very pleased by the way I've been treated in Aracena. People are very friendly, they're kind, they're welcoming. There's this phrase they always say in Spanish, and I probably won't get it right, but it's essentially they're saying like, if you need anything, I'm here. And I've really appreciated that. I would say that, like you said, because there are not a lot of people in Aracena that look like me, I do get stared at on the streets. But once people like talk to me or come up to me and get to know me, they're just so kind and they know like, okay, they know that I'm here teaching, and so it's fine. But my experience here has been, for the most part, really good. People seem very open and can get past what I look like to know who I am. So
my own personal experience so far has been nothing but welcoming arms since I got here. I already have my own Spaniard mom, which I did not ask for, but she's here, so that's fine. I think the students here are they're very open to people who look like me.
yes.
And they're very open to learning about how I feel living in America and everything like that. I have to say that being around in Aracena, I have definitely feel like the people here are definitely nicer than people in America,
That's
in my
true.
opinion.
That's true.
But even though some of the kids think that people here in Spain are mean, but I don't feel that way. But I definitely feel that I've been welcomed to this opening community that is willing to learn from me, and they're willing to teach me as well.
Great. Roger, Whitney, I'm going to ask you about our school, and I'd like for you to think about good things and bad things. If you can find a bad thing at all, please just mention one. But tell us 3 good things about a school. So, 3 good things about a school, 1 bad thing, 1 thing
Yes.
that we need
Very,
to work
very
on.
objective.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I would have to say, like I said before, the students and the teachers here are very welcoming. So they kind of treat you like family as soon as you come in. The second is that they're so willing to accommodate to me as a teacher, and they're willing to allow me to teach the students my best way to teach them English, which I really like. And the third is, like Whitney said before, that anytime I need something, they will be there to help me out. The only thing that I say that they need help in, it's not a lot of things, I'm just thinking. But I think the only thing that they need help in is, what I explained to Carlos before was, I wish that the kids weren't in a hole, which means I wish they had a wider spectrum about other countries other than just Spain. Because I noticed that when I was teaching them Black History Month, a lot of them did not know a lot of the things that I know about America. A lot of them just think America is so fun and free, and it's not like that all the time. And I also noticed that some of them didn't even know that racism does happen in Spain. So yeah.
Yeah. I guess to piggyback off what Roger said, I would say I appreciate that the teachers and students are very welcoming, but also very receptive to the idea of me being here and coming into their classrooms and sharing about my life, my culture, my language. Like I've always felt very like welcome to just come and, like she said, teach through the best way I know how to teach and just share in that way. So that's been huge. Everybody is very kind and welcoming. I also have a Spanish mom that I didn't ask for, but she takes really good care of me. Hello, Mama Peppa. And what else? I think I like that the kids are not only learning from me and about my culture, but I learned so much from the students and teachers just from being in their classrooms, hearing them like interact, the way they teach, like the culture of like education in Spain. Like I also get to learn a lot as well. So it's just been a beautiful experience. I think the only thing I would say is because of COVID, my experience has been I was the first 4 months at La Julianita and the last 4 months at San Blas. And I was really hesitant at first about making that switch, but it would have been nice to be at both schools the whole time and not have it separated, if that makes sense. So that would be my only thing, but we can't help that because of COVID. So.
Yes, now I'd like to focus on cultural differences. You come from the USA. Have you felt any cultural shock here in Spain? Something you find quite weird, quite strange?
Yeah. You want me to start or you want to start?
I'll start. Okay.
All right.
So the first thing I noticed when I came here, I think it was like my first week of teaching, I would come out on campus or like in the plaza, and it was around in the afternoon, and I would see kids smoking. And that is a huge culture shock for me, because in America you have to be 18, now it's 21 to smoke. And the kids here just roll it up and smoke it, and they're like 14 and 16 years old, so that's different for me to see. Definitely the food. Since I come from Haiti, or I have like a Caribbean background, I really like a lot of hot stuff. So it took me a while to get used to how Spaniards eat, which is not with any hot stuff. So I'm still trying to get used to that. But other than that, that's really about it.
Yeah. It was a culture shock to come to a city that just has a majority of one type of race, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, I am one of very few people here that look like me. So that was a culture shock at first, but I kind of was prepared for that because I had done my research. I think the fact that everything closes down from 2 to 5 was a little shocking for me. But I've come to appreciate that time in the day where everybody just kind of relaxes and recharges for the rest of the afternoon. It was hard to have to speak in Spanish for everything. When I was at work, in the grocery store, if I wanted to book a hotel or make a call, like everything has to be in Spanish, which is good for my Spanish, but it was an adjustment from what I was used to back home. And I think, like Roger was saying before, just how like genuine people are here. Like they don't want anything else but just to like help and make sure you're okay. It is something that's very different compared to the US. So to say that like people are kinder here, I don't think that's an understatement. So yeah.
Thank you. Alfonso. So probably we should wrap up a little bit.
Okay.
So Roger and Whitney, I just want to thank you for making our lives richer, for broadening up our scopes about the world, for helping us with our English, for being interested in Creole languages as you are. Creole languages, languages from the Caribbean,
And well, just for making us happy and for inspiring us, thank you very much. Poncho.
Yes, for me, it's also a pleasure to be able to know people like you, because I'm learning a lot of things from you. Apart from that, I'm listening to other English accent I'm not used to listening to.
Yeah.
So sometimes you are influencing my English, and I think thanks to you, my English is also improving. So I think also you are giving us a different perspective on things, and that is very good. It is good to have contact with different cultures, because that is something which enriches us. So thank you very much, and
Poncho, let's give
Let's,
them
yeah.
a round of applause.
yes, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aracena.